And everybody, welcome to another edition of the Arkansas Football Report with Otis, Kirk. I'm Jason Pattison. I want to thank you all for jumping on with us tonight. It's going to be a great show. Otis was not able to make it between commitments, also with practice being late in the afternoon. There was just no way that he could make the show tonight. But I got you taken care of. I promise you, you guys are going to love this guy. His name is Marcus Carlton. He also is on another podcast here in the state of Arkansas, works over with Arkansas State, but I can promise you he is going to bring it tonight. So let's bring him on. Marcus, how's it going, man?
Hey, man, appreciate the opportunity to come on with you.
Dude, I'm going to tell you what, this has been a thing kind of in the making now for a little while now. It's you and I have, crossed paths before and we've always tried to look for a spot where we were like, hey, you know what? This is going to be something that's going to be fun. We got to do this. And this was just kind of something that happened.
The timing finally lined up. The heavens opened, the clouds aligned, however you want to say it. And here we are.
Yeah, man. So you're over in NEA, over in Jonesboro.
Yeah.
I am right now over in St. Joe, Missouri. I will be covering the Kansas City training camp today or tomorrow morning. So I'm going to be over with the Chiefs. We've got Andy Reid, got Patrick Mahomes going to get some sound bites. Also going to have a few stories out of this as well. They'll be going over to Pig Trail Nation. So be sure to jump in there as well. All content's free with hogville.net. Also, I want to thank our sponsor, Torchy's Tacos, over in with locations in Rogers and Fayetteville. Go over and hit that QR code there at the bottom that goes directly to Torchy's website. Go over there, get gift cards, merchandise, you name it. The place is great. You want some fresh queso that's made every day, doesn't come in a bag. This place brings it every time. Their tacos are great. I don't have the new taco for the month, so I'll have to get that from Marcus here pretty soon. But I want to thank you guys again for jumping on with us. And also make sure to go by and check out any of the Torchy's locations in Rogers and in Fayetteville. Rogers off of Pauline Whitaker Parkway, and also in Fayetteville off of MLK. So make sure to go by and stop by, say hey to Jonathan or Marcus, and they'll get you taken care of. So I got a story. I'm going to start this off real quick. I'm driving up to St. Joe. My dad, my daughter, and I, we're taking a little road trip. We're having some dad, granddaughter, daughter time. We're having a good time, right? Go over to the Air Force Base that I was stationed at Whiteman. Take a couple of laps around the base and stuff. I'm not able to get in because you have to have a sponsor, and I didn't have a sponsor today, so that's fine. But we got to see some A-10s and some T-38 aircraft flying around. Cool. And now, man, I'm going to tell you what, it was a lot of fun. It really was.
That'll, something about military aircraft. It's funny you mentioned that because earlier this week I got a chance to see a Black Hawk helicopter up close and personal. Long story short, a friend of a friend was on the crew. They were flying into area close to where I'm from, about 30 minutes from my house. And they were like, hey, why don't y'all come up and with us, and we'll take a up close and personal look at the Black Hawk, get some pictures and everything. So I've always been kind of a junkie for good military aircraft anyway. So that's awesome that you got to do that.
Yeah, and that was the base that I was stationed at for a little while. We didn't get to see the B-2 bombers. They didn't even have the bays open or anything like that, so we couldn't even see the aircraft from afar. But that's okay. But what I want to kind of cartwheel from that story is, Arkansas's offensive line needs to have rock solid foundation, just like a military installation does, because 100%. Your installation's got, if it has a rock hard foundation, it's able to operate smoothly. Extrapolates to Arkansas football,
right?
Here's the thing, MC. Whenever I go over and see the offensive line, the first person that I see that's front and center is Eric Mateos. Okay. Second person that I see up in front and center is Sam Pittman. How does that kind of express the urgency that this staff understands the scrutiny, the pressure, and the win now that they have to have?
I think so. I mean, we all know Pittman's history. He's been labeled the offensive line guru for, I guess, all the way back to when he was at Tennessee coaching offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And, the fact that he now is trusting enough, to me, this is what it seems like. It seems like he's trusting enough in his offensive coordinator that he can go in and focus on his specialty, which is the offensive line, following under and without undermining his offensive line coach. Because I've seen several quotes from Pittman talking about, hey, Eric is running things, and I'm here kind of as his glorified grad assistant, doing whatever he needs me to do in regards to helping coach the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there are times when there are situations that come up in practice that Sam's like, hey, Eric, maybe kind of pulls him aside. So, hey, I've seen this before. This is, ... And then Eric goes back and implements it, and it adds more credibility to Coach Mateos as well.
Yeah. And one of the things that I took away yesterday, Sam's letting Eric run this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not get this twisted. Like you just said, he's letting Eric run this. But when he sees something like yesterday, for instance, he sees Fernando Carmona, whenever they were doing some drills, he was supposed to come across. He was supposed to, take the right hand, put it up against the breastplate, punch with the left, and then swim across and then take off, right? Go for the second level.
Mm-hmm.
He did not hit the bag hard enough. And you're supposed to be able to hear those things pop. I kind of heard it pop. He laid into him. He said, you're not doing it right. Go back and do it again. If you hit that bag, I'm supposed to be able to hear it from across the field.
I like that. I love, a lot of people are talking about when Petrino being back into the mix and the attention to detail he had. This to me sounds like attention to detail and getting back to basic fundamentals, to where, just like you said, you've got to have the rock solid foundation of your basic fundamentals, and then success will follow from there. But you've got to do things right to start with, because if you cut corners from the start, you're going to be in trouble from that point forward. And
what I kind of took from everything that they were doing yesterday was there, of course, first day of practice, you've got some energy. You've got some giddy. Hey, you know what? First game's in 30 days. We're going to come out here and we're going to bust our ass, and we're going to make sure that we're going to get better. Now, the point I'm making is that they're taking everything that they were doing in the spring that was over and over and over and over again. They're condensing that into the first 4-5 drills, first periods. That's it. And they're moving on. So they're still having that attention to detail that they were carrying over from spring, but they're not putting as much time into it because honestly, they don't need to now.
Right.
And that signals to me that they are head and shoulders above where they were last year.
I mean, I certainly hope so. I want to be able, to kind of echo what you were saying about condensing it down. In my opinion, if you haven't got it by now, you're probably not going to get it. So keep hammering it over and over and over is more or less a waste of time.
It is. And so I was pretty refreshed to see that, because they didn't have to go back and break some things down that, I'm going to be very frank with you, that's what we saw last year. And I kind of took it as they're going to try to get past the first 30 days last year. Hopefully something kind of irons itself out and guys kind of take a hold, and then they can run with it, which never happened.
Yeah.
This, on the other hand, this is far and away so different. And it starts with Taylor Green. This guy came in and understood his role. And the role was, Bobby wanted him to come in from day one, take this team by the jockstrap, and said, boys, you're following me.
Yeah.
And it is apparent on that field. It was so apparent yesterday.
That's music to my ears, because that was one thing that I felt like, as good as KJ could be on the field, and we were told, there were articles, and even back to when he was recruited, that he was not the most vocal leader. He was more of an actions leading kind of guy. And sometimes you've got to have that voice. You've got to have that voice of a Quinn Grovey style, or a Ryan Mallett, even, Tyler Wilson, I think about those type of guys who were the field generals, that if one of their teammates needed to be called out on something, they were going to call them out, but they were going to do it in a way to be like, hey man, pick it up. Let's go. You know, they weren't going to embarrass them or disrespect them, but they were going to get them to where they needed to be to get the ultimate success.
One of the things that I also noticed was that he's challenging wide receivers on a play in and play out basis, because he knows exactly where these guys are. And then I know this is individual drills, but this is where it starts. And this is where it begins to start to take hold and start to get better each day. And he's challenging each one of those wide receivers that he's throwing to, making sure that you're not hitting it at the 4-yard line. You're hitting at the 4.5-yard line or the 3-yard line. Those are huge differences than what happened last year, where you had a DB that was covering 2 wide receivers. And that right there is the quintessential. It was just Arkansas football in a whole last year in 2023.
The fact that my remote control survived those instances that we saw on TV is nothing short of a miracle, because there were multiple times that I was ready to throw my remote either through the wall or sometimes through the TV because of what I was seeing.
Man, you know, and what I didn't see a lot of Arkansas fans make it on social media busting their TVs in half. It's like they just didn't give a damn anymore.
Yeah.
And they just said, I'm not even going to buy another TV because it's not even worth it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just, you know, and maybe some of that's coming with age with me. I mean, I have been known to break stuff in the past, but now I'm kind of to the point of like, I'm just going to hold it and I'll go outside and throw rocks or something.
Man, I'm going to tell you, it's back before I really started getting into media, one of the things that really kind of got me down was, Razorback run defense. There has been times, man, that you and I know we've talked about this, where Auburn's ran 490 yards through the gut, and you knew your guard center guard didn't have, or your defensive tackles didn't have a chance against their guard center guards. And I'm going to tell you what, the second level of this defense is going to be better than the first level. And I think that's saying something.
I think there are some very key pieces returning on the front 4, but once you get past that and get to this back 7, I'm interested to see, because in all honesty, I'll be honest with you, I haven't looked at it very closely to this point, but to hear you say that the linebackers and the secondary are going to be strong, that gives me hope, because I feel like that was a trouble point last year. This
is what I saw yesterday. You got Coach T. Will, which, by the way,
got all kinds of get by the publicity he's getting right now.
Mad props from Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
And did you see that clip with Pat and all that? Man, that was so freaking cool.
Well, and then Randy Moss even tweeted out, he's like, man, this coach got me thinking about coming out of retirement. So, I mean, you're getting notoriety right now on the national level that Arkansas football usually doesn't get in a positive manner.
Well, and that's what he said too. He said, you've got John Calipari that's with the Razorback basketball team now. And also then you have with Sam and Coach T. Will, and things might be kind of brewing over in Arkansas, and you got to kind of watch out. So yesterday, Coach T. Will was over with the linebackers. They were running some drills, and T. Will didn't have to say really hardly anything. He was just counting it off. And you know why? You had Brad Spence and you had Xavier Sori telling those guys if they missed something, they were telling them what was going wrong. Yeah. And then after they told them what was going wrong, they did the drill. T. Will took them off to the side and said, hey, this is what I want to see from you. So now not only are you having player-led or coach-led instruction, you got player-led instruction. First day of practice, they are setting a tone that we haven't seen in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and this is, I hate to sound like a broken record, but this is music to my ears, because this is the kind of stuff, the attention to detail, the on-field generals. That when you were talking about Sori and Spence taking that role, it reminded me of guys like Grant Morgan and maybe some Bumper Pool as well, to take that lead on the field and basically be a coach on the field. And that's, I think you're right. I think that was missing last year for sure. I mean, we could do a whole show on what went wrong last year, and it'd probably be a 3 or 4 part series. But to see that these guys are coming in on day one with this type of attitude tells me that there has been almost a complete attitude adjustment across the board.
Yeah, there has been, and you can see it. It's palpable. It really is.
Yeah.
Because I can sit here and tell you all day long how great things were. I can sit here and tell you all day long how bad things were. But I'm not going to do anybody any justice if I just do that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go and you have to give it an objective point of view. And that's what I saw yesterday. And I want to talk a little bit more about Taylon Green. He was on target. He felt like he was pretty on target. Mm-hmm. Everybody saw the Tyrone Broden catch. Everybody saw it.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what, if that guy was 6'3", he ain't making a reel. He needed all 6'7" plus.
I mean, 6'7", man, that's huge. I mean, I'm trying to think back the last time we had a receiver that big. The only one that comes to mind for me is Marcus Monk. And he wasn't really 6'7". He was more about 6'5", but his ability to jump, was what separated him in addition to being 6'5". But 6'7", I mean, just throw it up. It's kind of like the old joke that was here when KJ and Burks were down there. It's like, all the heck with it. Traylon's down there somewhere, I think that may apply here as well with Broden.
It is. And I think the only maybe Matt Jones, if you flexed him out.
Yeah.
And that might be the other time that you have had a wide receiver that tall on the field.
That's huge for a wide receiver, because you got to think about it. Most defensive backs, a huge defensive back is going to be what, 6'1", 6'2"? Yeah. I mean, that's going to be huge for a defensive back. You're not going to encounter many of those.
No. And I think that's where Taylon is honestly able to maybe maximize that potential that Tyrone has.
Yeah.
By putting some balls where nobody else can get them but him. We didn't see that last year.
And then when you have the defense adjust to go over and double cover him, well, that means you've got one-on-one with Satania, or maybe with a Luke Haas that gets, because you can't tell me Petrino's going to keep him solely as a tight end the whole time. With the matchup nightmare that Haas is going to be, I can see him being all over the place.
Yeah. And towards the end of the show, because I want to go over something with you that I've kind of explored the last couple of weeks, and I think it's going to be a matchup nightmare. We'll go over that here just shortly.
Nice.
So you and I've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a conspiracy theory that you've been kind of working on now here for the last months.
It goes years, honestly. If I'm being completely honest with it, it goes years.
Man, so let's go down that rabbit hole. What you got?
All right. So over on our show, Inside the Hog Pen, we did a podcast exclusive talking about the Arkansas curse. And, we've seen it time and time again with Arkansas. And I'm not going to give everything away, but it kind of set the table for you. And if you want to hear it, it's available on every platform where you can get a podcast. Not to mention, we're going to discuss it a little more on our season premiere next Wednesday night as well, on our YouTube and Facebook channels for Inside the Hog Pen. So you start thinking about freak occurrences was the phrase that I like to use to give my receipts. Okay. What is a freak occurrence with Arkansas sports that comes to your mind right away? The foul ball. Number one, the foul ball. 3 of your top defensive players surround a ball, national title on the line. The baseball god said, not happening. You have that. You have the 2011 Sugar Bowl, the scoop and score. You have, there are countless
lists.
You could go on and on and on, but those are 2 of them. I even throw in one, and I'm not going to give this away, but I'm going to throw in one in the podcast that is a game that does not directly involve Arkansas. It's a game between 2 other teams, but the outcome of that game is another freak occurrence that proves that Arkansas is cursed, because secondary down the line, it ended up affecting Arkansas. So you'll know it when you hear it in the podcast. But it's talking about this, and I traced it all the way back to the big shootout of 1969. And there was at least 1 or 2 instances in every decade since that was a freak occurrence that came up, and just like, this kind of stuff doesn't happen. This is just, we have to be cursed for this stuff to keep happening over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Horn missing 5 field goals versus Texas in 1985, and football loses by 2. Steve Atwater dropping the interception against Miami. Reggie Fish. Need I say more?
2006.
I mean, so those type of things are what we're talking about, and that's what I'm using as the receipts for why Arkansas is cursed. And we also talk about, what's the cause of it. So if like I said, I don't want to give the whole thing away because I want people to go and listen to the pod, but just check it out and let us know what you think about. Am I off my rocker? Am I tightening my tin foil a little too tight, or maybe do I have a leg to stand on here? But it sure feels like that a lot of these freak occurrences just keep happening to the Arkansas program. I mean, you could even go so far as Hagen Smith this last year. Think about how dominant he was all year long. The man put up video game numbers all year long.
Yeah.
And then we get down to his last start, and what happens in his last start? He has 1 bad inning. I mean, how does that stuff keep happening?
Yeah.
So that's the basis of the podcast, and that was a way to kind of warm us up to get ready for our season premiere next week, because we're going to start our show back up on the regular every Wednesday night next week, 7:00 Wednesday night inside the Hog Pen. Appreciate you letting me plug it.
Hey, no problem, man. And that's also another thing too. That's what I want you to do. Also, whenever you're able to come on and help me out, also, I mean, this it's a give and take, and that's perfect.
We've all got the same end goal, man. We want to talk hogs,
Winning hogs.
Winning hogs. Let's specify that. We've talked enough losing and heartbreak, and I made a joke the other day about whoever has the voodoo doll for the Arkansas teams. I hope they lose their needle, because I can't take any more of this heartbreak.
No, you're in a huge boat with a lot of fans, because they're, like you said, there have been so many instances where Arkansas fans have thrown their head back, thrown their arms up, and said, what do we have to do to win? To have some shimmer of joy in our life? Because by God, there are more times than not, it's not there.
Well, and I don't know of a team that has lost in more freakish ways than Arkansas has. It's like you're snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, you have it all but wrapped up, and all of a sudden the baseball gods or the football gods or, the voodoo doll or whatever, it rears its ugly head, and we're all left walking out of the stadium like this.
Yeah.
Just in sheer disbelief.
Man, last time Jay Cutler played here at Arkansas when he was with Vanderbilt, ripped us up. I mean, ripped Arkansas up. And I'm walking back to my car. I'm walking down Razorback, and had the same exact look you did. And I'm listening to Vanderbilt fans. How in the hell they got a tailgate this close to the stadium? I have no idea. Yeah. They're right across the street from old George Cole Field, now the practice field.
Oh, wow.
They're close. And the first thing that I hear out of their mouths, if you all eat bacon, are y'all cannibals? If not, we just ate your lunch. I was like, God. Just stop.
I mean, when you're getting trash talk about Vanderbilt, what does that say about your current situation? I mean,
yeah.
Oof. That's awful.
Man, I'm gonna tell you what, it was harder than swallowing a rock. It was bad.
Yeah, and I had that same feeling. One of the games, I didn't even talk about this in the podcast, but another game is the showdown where Brandon Allen and Dak Prescott in Fayetteville, I believe it was 2015.
Yeah,
where Brandon Allen had 7 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion catch. And yet Arkansas still gets beat. And it's just like, how does this happen? But anyway, it's just, there's a lot of terrible losses that we could spend time on.
We could spin our wheels for hours on that.
Hours. Yes.
So let's refocus for just a second. I want to go over the quarterback room for just a few minutes. Right. It's taken a transformation on its own. You've got Austin Ledbetter came over from baseball. That's a different look. You've got KJ Jackson, which, by the way, I'm going to throw this out there. KJ Jackson's lost at least 15 pounds and from spring, and he looks a lot leaner. It almost looks like he's kind of getting into that Taylon Green type lean almost, but not quite. He's got some muscle because he's pretty thick dude. He got a little bit of run during SEC media days as well. So Taylor Green, he's a pretty big dude. I mean, 6'6". He's all of 6'6". First thing that come to my mind was when I first saw him, how is he going to be able to take a hit? I know that the West Coast Conference, they're a good conference, but at the same time, it's different than the SEC. Texas and Oklahoma are going to find that mess out real fast.
Yeah.
And it's not game one. It's after the Red River rivalry. Guess who Texas has coming into their house? Georgia.
Oh, yeah. Well, welcome to the SEC schedule.
Those are the gains that SEC teams have over these teams, and they'll start to work it out. So off of that, something, God forbid, happens to Taylor Green. We're looking at Malachi Singleton, possibly the clear-cut number 2, and then you're looking at KJ Jackson, a freshman. It really kind of is leading up to what happened a couple of years ago when Arkansas got on a run. Arkansas goes down to A&M, which we'll talk about that here in a few. KJ gets hurt, and now you've got to bring in a backup. We all know how that kind of went.
Yeah.
Bobby's going to have a game plan for Malachi or KJ, whoever it happens to be. But what I want to look at is the efficiency that Malachi could have with this offense if it's played to his strengths, which Bobby's going to do. Right. But he's going to need that backfield with those running backs to be his best friend.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, if I'm trying to think back to when Bobby was here, and I realize the offense is going to be a little different. It's going to be a little more modernized than it was. I guess that's been 13 years ago. But it's going to be the same principles. You're going to have a back that can pick up the blitz, a back that can pick up, the defensive audibles to know when to slide, when to swing out, when to do whatever it is he's got to do to make the offense successful. The thing that gives me hope for Malachi Singleton is that, again, I go back to this whole attention to details thing. Bobby is, or I say that like I know him, Coach Petrino, let me feel that way. Coach Petrino is a man that prepares. It feels like he prepares for every possible scenario. If you want an example of this, look back to the 2010 Auburn game. Ryan Mallett goes down. Tyler Wilson comes in. The offense just goes, man. And I mean, it helps when you have a Jarius Wright and a Joe Adams and Greg Childs and those type guys out there. But you still got to have the guy that knows the offense, that can set up and knows that his team has confidence in him to get the job done. And I think that Malachi will be prepared the same way that Tyler Wilson was that year. I actually would love to see Malachi develop to the point where he's pushing Talon, because I think that was part of what made Mallett so good, was that he knew Tyler Wilson was right on his heels, pushing him every single practice, trying to overtake that position. And, as we've come to find out in later years, it might have been a little more than just a friendly competition there between those two. But I would like to see, good spirited competition to where Talon is not afraid to make a mistake, but he knows that he's got to be on his point at all times, because Singleton's coming up right behind him and is chomping at his heels. And that's what I hope to see as far as the development of the backup quarterback. And it could be KJ. It could be, I don't want to take anything away from him because we don't know who it's going to be yet. You assume it's going to be Singleton because of the experience factor that he's got over KJ, with KJ just coming in and being a freshman. But whoever it is, I have no doubts that backup will be thoroughly prepared to step in and take over. It's just, are all the other pieces going to, is it going to throw a wrench in the gears? Are the gears going to keep running smoothly no matter who's at quarterback? Or is there going to be just a little bit of difference, maybe the way that he releases the ball or something that gets there, the timing is off? That'll be interesting to see. Hopefully we don't have to get to that point to where we're talking about the backup because Green has been injured, but you can't overlook it and you can't hide your head in the sand from it.
Yeah, you really can't. One of the things that I did notice that Malachi was doing during spring ball that I really didn't get a chance to see yesterday was those crossing routes, those 5 and 7 yard crossing routes. He was throwing it a little bit behind. which tells me that it's his timing
Mm-hmm.
that he's got to get down. Now, he's had all summer, and he's had a guy that will push him to the limit,
right,
in getting that timing down. So that, like you were, I'm going to echo what you were saying. That gives me hope, because what these guys are going through right now. So, spring or fall camp is in the afternoon right now, first 4 sessions. Reason why is because there are some players that are in summer school. This is the last week. If they had moved it to the mornings, there were going to be guys that would not be able to participate. So that's why they moved it to the afternoon sessions. It'll go back to the morning sessions starting on Monday. So you have all of these guys that are coming in, and I'm going to be honest with you, Marcus, I looked like Larry Allen in August. It was that bad. I'm telling you what, I could have won the John Madden butt sweat award yesterday. Yeah. It was awful hot. God, it was hot.
It was pretty much a scorcher all across the state yesterday. So I'm glad I wasn't out there in that, because I tend to be quite the sweater as well. So that would have not have been good for me.
You got also if you guys have any thoughts, comments, concerns, good, bad, ugly, for that matter, I should have thrown this out there, Marcus, earlier. Throw us a comment. Also got one from Dylan Madden, said, "Holy moly, it's the one and only JP." Thanks, Dylan, for that, man. Yeah, I know I kind of went submarine for a while, then all of a sudden kind of popped back up. So, we're gonna take a short break, probably about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then we're gonna go in to the meat of the schedule. There's a 4-game snap that I've kind of identified. I think some folks might have as well. That is going to be a make or break turning point for the season for Arkansas. I know that a lot of people have looked at Oklahoma State, but there's a bigger one. And we're going to go over that here in just a minute. This is the the Arkansas Football Report with Otis Kirk, sponsored by Torchy's Tacos. And everybody, welcome back. I want to say thank you guys. Also say thank you to Torchy's Tacos. Make sure to go by locations in Rogers and in Fayetteville. Go check out some of their handmade tacos and house-made queso, and check out the full-service bar, because I'm going to tell you what, everything on that menu that I've had so far, between the fajita chicken, also the fajita beef, and also the brisket tacos, have been divine. Make sure also to go and check out the breakfast tacos. So I know you saw that little blip towards the end with the Arkansas pregame show. That will start every home game 2 hours prior to the start of every Fayetteville game with myself and Marshall, Foreman, former Arkansas running back, and also played a little bit of Arena League football, has some coaching experience. He has got a lot of knowledge, and I'm going to tap into every ounce that he's got. So y'all check us out before every home game live at Torchy's in Fayetteville. So come check us out. All right, man, I'm going to tell you what. So we've covered a lot of ground so far. We've covered Razorback the quarterback room. We've covered first day of scrimmage or practice, conspiracy theories, Air Force bases. I'm kind of
all over the map, man.
What's that?
I said we've been all over the map, and that makes me feel right at home because that's what we do a lot on our show. We just kind of go across the board,
and I would like to have that Marty McGee feel because I mean,
yeah,
that's what makes the show great. It
exactly.
Really is. So I want to look at the schedule, and there has been a 4-game snap that I have identified, and I think some fans have, and I kind of given you a heads up this afternoon of kind of what I was going to talk about in regards to that. So I know that a lot of fans have been looking at the Oklahoma State game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be honest with you. If Arkansas loses, but it's competitive, I'm not going to worry about that because there's a couple of games in the SEC that I think Arkansas has a legit shot. And in this 4-game cluster, I think that's where it lies. So let's look at September 21st. You know, you go down to the Plains.
Yep.
You've got Peyton Thorne coming back, second season under Hugh Freeze. Arkansas didn't fare very well whenever they came here. And let's face it, they were a team that had let go of the rope.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be that way this time.
I hope not. I really hope not. That is one thing that, I can take getting beat if the other team's just better. But when you see a team that lets go of the rope, that as a fan, that's hard to stomach.
It is. And on top of that, it was at home.
Yeah, that's the other piece of it, man. That's the other piece.
Losing to Hugh Freeze at home and then him boat race you and then take a lap afterwards after the game, man, that should be bulletin board material that sits up there and says, you know what? Look what this guy did. This is what his team did. And this is what he said afterwards. He came into your house and you punked him. It is your turn now to go back and punk him. Yeah. And I think that's where they're at.
This reminds me the trouble that Arkansas's had with Hugh Freeze over the last, Liberty. I guess ever since the Hunter Henry heave was the one time we came out ahead of things. The trouble they've had with him reminds me a lot of the way things were with SMU when Houston Nutt got the job. That was the big thing was, can we just beat SMU, please? Can we? And how far has SMU come since that point? But anyway,
ACC.
Yeah. But to think about that, I mean, I remember hearing stories about how that they were putting little ponies up, like if a guy missed a workout, instead of getting, his check mark or whatever, they would put a little SMU pony logo in his name slot to let him know, hey, SMU just beat you on this day. So I'm hoping that there are some things going on behind the scenes that, like, maybe it's a little bobblehead of Hugh Freeze or whatever that just keeps popping up around, not just the workout facility, but out on the practice field or whatever you got to do to get these guys up to the point where you want to go in and you want to take care of business in this game. That you have to, because your pride is on the line here, because you've been boat raced by not just Auburn, but this coach. The reason he has the Auburn job is because he beat you at Liberty. Let's just face it here. It's got him the Auburn job. So you got to have a little extra mustard on the hot dog, so to speak, when you go to play against a Hugh Freeze-led team.
Yeah, I want to throw this up here. Loki, I'll get your comment up here in just a second. It's a fact that Hugh Freeze has had your number, except for whenever, like you said,
right?
Arkansas kind of Ole Miss, or Arkansas at Ole Miss with that Hunter Henry because let's face it, if that does not happen, I think Ole Miss was going to go to the national championship and have a legit shot at winning that too, because they were just a little bit of a one-off from that.
Yeah,
and so That's the first piece of that puzzle, because there's 4 games there that I was talking about. Second one, and you and I have talked about this, and I know that you've talked about this. Texas A&M, Jerry World, last game there. Now it's going to go to home and home. Weird shit happens at that game. I don't know how else to put it. Weird shit happens.
Always. I was there last year. Weird is an understatement. It just, and from the time we walked in, it just had a different feel about it. And it was like, I remember leaning over to my wife and say, this game's going to go off the rails today. I just have a feeling. And it's not the craziest one we've seen in that series, but it did have some moments where you're just like, what is going on both teams? For both teams, it was that way.
At what point during KJ's entire time at Arkansas did he leap from the 5 freaking yard line? None, but 1. That's it.
And that not only turned that game, but that ended up where that turned the momentum in that game completely on its head. Losing that game with a now NFL starting kicker, Cam Little.
Yep. Doink
on the top of the upright. And again, this could be another one for my voodoo doll scenario, because if they're playing that game anywhere else, the uprights are not that tall. The field goes good. Arkansas holds on and wins.
Yep. I think that's just some of the most mind-boggling, hair-raising, hair-pulling moments that gives me a little bit of hope that when Arkansas rolls in on September 28th, like D-Mad said, a little bit of get back. I want to put up Loki's comment here really quick. That A&M game is going to hit different this year. Bobby P coming back with something to prove, and I have no doubt that he'll deliver on his end of the deal. I don't think it's more of a get back to A&M as much as it is giving Jimbo the middle finger, saying this is what you should have done with me in the first place, because you didn't give me the keys to the Ferrari.
Right.
I saw you put it in the ditch, because Lord knows he can spot that from a mile away. And you have a guy that's sitting there saying, I'm going to show you what you were missing. And on top of that, I'm going to score 98, if 100, 102 if you could. I mean, go back to the old Andre Ware Houston Cougar days where they just put it on people, because he's got a little bit of that Steve Spurrier in him to say, stop me. That's your job. And if you can't, I'm going to run that score up.
Yeah. And I would love nothing more than to see that against Texas A&M, because the way they have dominated this series over 8 of the last 10 years. I think Arkansas has 2 victories in the series, and I think that's it since we've been playing at Jerry World. I would love nothing more than to see them humbled and to see them walking out of Jerry World with their head down for once, instead of it being Arkansas fans yet again.
I was there for the 2010 version whenever Dennis Johnson ran into the end zone. I was on that end of the field, and watching the air physically leave A&M's lungs felt so good. It felt so good. I almost thought, yes, this is finally we got some get back. And then after that, it was like 9 years until they did it again. I thought, do I need to go to Jerry World to like break this curse or something? Because if that's the case, I feel bad. I don't think it's on me, but I don't want Arkansas to go through another 9-year period. Hell, we just got done with getting rid of the Alabama curse of 17 years in a row, 19 years in a row, 17 because that was how many years Nick was there. But the third game, this is a game that really sticks with Razorback fans. It's Arkansas versus Tennessee. It's on my birthday. And also, Matt also said the reason why he had some get back on that was because he proposed to his fiance at the Auburn game.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
God. Yeah. I hope he did it at the first of the game, because ain't nobody want to hear that at the end.
I believe it was pretty early. If I remember correctly, it was pretty early. So,
you've had the 6 overtime game with Tennessee back in 2001. It might have been 03 actually, 02.
0-2.
Jason Witten was
Mhm.
tied in at that in
He
that
caught
game.
the game winner, as a matter of fact.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah, it was. Because God, there was a couple of times that he caught a pass on the right side and had daylight, and I'm like, God, what are we gonna do to keep this guy out? And he ended up going to Dallas. But with Tennessee, it seems like there's always been that close game. I'm gonna do it. Sterner fumble.
Yeah.
Then you have the Cool Hand Luke redemption game in '99, which quintessentially knocked T. Martin and Tennessee out of the national championship altogether. I feel like having Tennessee, this might be that moment where, just like with A&M, you got a new regime, you got a new quarterback. This might be the time to get A&M. This also might be the time to get Tennessee too, because you don't have Hendon Hooker back. You got a new quarterback. You got Josh Heupel that's kind of trying to reformat the offense again around a new quarterback.
Right.
And you catch them 6 games into the season. This might look really good for Arkansas to kind of, have them come in and jump up and bite them.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, if anybody's complaining about the home schedule in Fayetteville this year, there's just no pleasing you, because if you look with in addition to this game, which we'll talk about the LSU game next, but in Fayetteville this year alone, you're going to have Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, and of course this bunch right here. So, I mean, that's about as good as you can hope for an SEC schedule to be in Razorback Stadium. But to go back to the Tennessee, you're right. There's something always about this game, because even in years when Arkansas has been down, I think back to the 2020 10-game season. Tennessee wasn't great at that point, but they were a bowl eligible team. Arkansas had them on the ropes and just could not land the knockout blow. I mean, it had them there. I mean, there were 2 or 3 games that year, and that's one that sticks out to me, to where it's just like it's right there. It's right there. You just can't get your hands around it good enough to grab it. And you could make an argument that was the case with a lot of games last year. But if Arkansas, depending on what they do prior to this point, because you're talking about UAPB, Oklahoma State, UAB, Auburn, A&M. What is that? That's 5 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. If you're 3-2 coming into that Tennessee game, and then you somehow pull the upset, because Tennessee will be ranked. They'll be ranked. They're one of the favorites to challenge Georgia in the I guess there's not an Eastern Division anymore, but in my head there still is.
Yeah.
They're one of the teams that's picked to kind of challenge Georgia a little bit. And if you come in, and I don't remember where exactly this game falls on Tennessee's schedule, but I remember looking at their schedule early on, and I looked at it and I was like, ooh, Arkansas feels like a trap game for Tennessee. And so I think you could look at that. Arkansas, if they could pull this off, that could really set the tone for the rest of the season as far as being able to get to bowl eligibility, which that's the first goal in front of you. Get bowl eligible. And then just where it goes from there, anything else on top of that is kind of cake at this point.
Because if they go into the bye week, which we're going to talk about that in just a second, they go into the bye week and say, for instance, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Say they're 4-2. 4-2. You are just on the cusp of making it to a bowl. I think Arkansas easily could probably go 6-6. That's one of those games that if you get Tennessee, and I want to, and I'm going to say this right now, and I'm going to come straight out and say it too. I really feel like, and this probably might not wear well, because Lord knows I've made some statements on the internet, and by God, they didn't live well at all. I'm telling you, like, when I put it out there and I hit send, it was like they already had 1.5 feet in the grave. But I think that there's a possibility that Tennessee might be LSU from about 3 or 4 years ago, whenever they had Edo right after the national championship. They came in and they were, as reverse of what Herm said, they were not who we thought they were.
Well, and Tennessee's coming off a lot of momentum from last year. So, I mean, personally, it would do me. I would love nothing more than to see them crash and burn, but to see them come into Fayetteville and drop one, especially one that they're not expecting to drop, I think it could possibly derail their season, depending on where they are sitting at that point. Because, I mean, we've all seen it. You come in, you have a very bad loss, it tends to carry over, to the next game. Mm-hmm. And that could possibly happen if Arkansas is able to put it together and pull this off. I think if Arkansas goes into the bye week sitting at 4-2 or even 3-3, I think you're going to have a lot of people on the national front that would be very shocked at that. I know you're talking to one right now that would be very happy if Arkansas came into the bye week at 3-3 or even 4-2.
Yeah, and I think if Arkansas if they're able to establish the front line, if they're able to establish control on the offensive front line, that's where the confidence can really start to go into that bye week now.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Sam Pittman's undefeated after a bye week.
That would be huge.
Now you have bye weeks again going into LSU and into Texas, which, by the way, I think is perfectly timed. And I think that might have been a cherry on top that the SEC said, hey, you know what? We've been screwing you for so long with this schedule thing, because let's face, I mean, Sam's made no bones about it either.
Yeah.
He said, you haven't done us any favors. And he said that on the podium himself.
And I say kudos to him for that, because he's saying probably what he's heard from every fan since he since he got the job and started making the rounds at the the Razorback shows and everything, because the SEC schedule is tough no matter what you have in front of you. But when it is stacked like it has been stacked against Arkansas the last few years, I mean, just the fact alone that we don't have Alabama or Georgia on the schedule this year, fans are finally looking at it and going, whew, man, what a break. And then so instead you've got Tennessee and Texas coming in to take the place of those two. So it doesn't get any easier, but it's finally, you finally feel like you've got a bit of a break, because the big games that you have, the majority of them are at home.
Yep. And D-Matt just said, COVID season was brutal. It was. First game of the season was Georgia.
Yeah. First game the man has as a head coach, and he's taking on a top 5, top 10 Georgia team. I mean,
he just left.
Yeah, who he just left. So he knows how deep that team was.
Yeah.
Unreal. Yeah. Just absolutely unreal.
So, SEC kind of has thrown them a bone a little bit, give them a little bit of a kudos and said, hey, you know what? You guys have really been taking it on the chin. We're going to give you bye weeks going into LSU. Now, let's look at that LSU game for just a second before we do a little bit of story time. LSU, never has it ever been 2 consecutive years of blowouts. It's always been nip and tuck, nip and tuck, nip and tuck, nip and tuck. That's what's going to happen again this year.
Yeah.
It's going to be nip and tuck. It's here. It's at home. Last time Arkansas played LSU here, 10-3.
Yeah.
And let's face it, you had opportunities at the yin-yang. It was like nobody wanted to win that game.
Yeah.
Now Brian Kelly has a new quarterback. No more Jaden Daniels.
Thank goodness.
Thank God. 2 top wide receivers gone as well. But you also have to deal with Harold Perkins. That guy's a beast.
That man, I mean, if you heard his name once last year, I mean, that to me, the kid was very good up to that point, almost elite, but he just wasn't getting the notoriety. To me, I felt like the stat line that he put up in that Arkansas game, because he was all over the place.
God, he was.
I mean, he was just
sideline to
sideline, getting sacks, breaking up passes. I mean, the man was doing it all. And I mean, it was just one of those deals of like, if he was a basketball player, you would have said, this kid's in the zone. He could do no wrong. And he just made it his point to take over that game. And he's one of the reasons that it was just unreal. I mean, he was video game-ish.
If there was a game if there was a team that I could flip on the schedule, I would flip Oklahoma State and LSU. I want to catch LSU at the first of the season when they don't have an established quarterback or established wide receivers or a possible established running game and catch them off guard, because at the end of the season, they're going to be nicked up. They're going to be banged up. But when you catch them in the middle of the season, they've had 5 weeks to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it might backfire a little bit on Arkansas, because not only has Arkansas had a week to kind of game plan extra, LSU's now had some time to figure some things out.
Yeah. Well, and to add on to that, if you flip-flop those games and you put that Oklahoma State game down in the middle of the season as a non-conference, I'm not saying Ollie Gordon wouldn't be as effective, but he's going to have a heck of a lot more hits put on him at the middle point of the season than he is at game 2. And he may still be effective, but it may be the difference in him running for 160 and 100. It could be that much of a difference because of the abuse he's going to take. Because let's face it, he's going to get the ball. Yeah. I mean, if he's not going to have to set out for getting a DWI, that tells me Gundy's going to give him the ball 25, 30 times a game.
Yeah.
So, that adds up, that, to steal a line from the new college football game, the wear and tear on Ollie Gordon that you're going to see late in the season would benefit Arkansas a lot more than having to play them game 2. But here we are, so we'll take what we got.
Exactly. All right. Well, it's getting that time, man. Got some story time real quick.
All right.
I'm going to give you a quick story of something that happened to me when I was a kid. It kind of goes hand in hand with where I'm at tonight. Here at I'm going to give them a selfless plug because they hooked us up at the Drury Inn here in St. Joe. We had some difficulty with our first hotel. They came through in a huge way, and we could not have been happier. So thank you to them. So when I was a kid, my great uncle was the dean of students at Fredonia State University up in upstate New York. Back then, and this is I'm going to set the table. This is that 89 to 95 time frame where they had training camp at that school. So when we would go up for family reunions, because that's where my side of the family's from, we go for the reunions, and then Uncle Bob would pair us off with my dad and me and my brother and a couple others, and we would go up to Bill's training camp. During that horrible 30 for 30 ride of 4 Super Bowls in a row that they made, and seeing the camaraderie, seeing all the different personalities walk by you, it just, as a kid, it makes you just in awe of just not only the stature, but the conversations that you're seeing these guys have. One of the guys that I personally was scared of when I was a kid was Daryl Talley.
For good reason.
For damn
Talley
good reason.
Was a bad man.
He was a bad man. And Cornelius Bennett, cool dude, seemed like he was all right. Bruce Smith, well, you just didn't mess with that guy. But Daryl Talley was the edgiest son of a gun. And I remember them walking up. I saw Thurman Thomas had just walked by, which that guy looked like he was about as white as a bulldozer. And he was big. I could not believe it, because you see him on TV and it's like, he's a big guy. You get up close, and also you're probably, I was a kid at the time. Yeah. He looked like a behemoth. So defense is starting to walk up, and they're walking off the practice field. Daryl Talley is holding his helmet. He finds a rookie, turns around, slams his helmet right into the rookie's chest and said, "It's your turn, blank." And this rookie starts giving him the business. He's like, "Wait till tomorrow." So we go up to training camp the next day. First whistle. Daryl Talley runs over to this guy. He's on the sidelines and just starts wailing on him. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? And it was very reminiscent of what happened yesterday with Justin Fields and I can never remember his name off the top of my head now. I'm going blank. Guy that just came over from Denver.
I'm not a pro guy, man. I can't help you out.
Oh man. Russell Wilson. Okay. So they got into it, and that's what it reminded me of yesterday. Oh, wow. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to Chiefs training camp tomorrow. There is no damn telling what's going to happen, because I know I've already read the scripts and or the Chiefs communication stuff that I get every day, and there's been some edginess, and I'm sitting there thinking, this could be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I would be shocked if you saw Mahomes and the backup get into it though.
No, man, him and Carson Wentz, they're good. They're good.
That's and you usually see fights in training camps, but how often do you see two quarterbacks going at it? I don't know that I've ever heard of that.
Doubt.
Usually it's an offensive line, defensive line, or linebacker and an offensive lineman, or linebacker and a tight end, or something like that. But you get two guys in the same position that decide to have a squabble in the middle of training camp. That I don't know that I've ever heard of two quarterbacks doing that.
You think Mike Tomlin walks in the next day into that quarterback room and says, "Hey, by the way, you two idiots, you're sitting beside each other now for the rest of training camp until you figure this out."
Yeah. Give them the old parent treatment. Get the 3XL shirt and make them wear the same shirt together.
Oh my God. I don't know if that room is big enough.
That would be worth watching. Somebody needs to live stream that just to see how that would go.
Be the fly on the wall right there. All right, so I got to ask you really quick. Do you have any Arkansas stories that you want to share with us that just kind of bring things back a little bit?
Oh man. Last year I got a chance to go for the first time in several years. I got a chance to go to, what did I go to? Three games last year. For me, living across the state, that was a big deal for me. Now, what made these unique was I went to the Little Rock game. I went to Dallas with my uncle, who, long story short, my uncle is the reason that I am the Hog fan I am today. He's the one who took me to my first game. It just kind of set the tone from there. And then, so I went to Jerry World, I went to Little Rock, and then I went down to Oxford because it's a 2-hour drive from my house down to Oxford. Now, what made this cool, lost 2 of the 3. The one we won was pretty ugly, and it was like 11,000 degrees in Little Rock that day. Very hot season opener. But what made it cool was that it was not just me and my wife that went, but it was me and my 2 boys that got to go as well. And so it was their first football games to get to go to. And just being able to, kind of pass that on the way it was passed to me this past year, even though we didn't win, we went, we made the memories. We had a great time. Probably the most memorable game I've ever been to was probably the Hunter Henry Heave. I was at that game with said uncle and my wife. The boys were, well, one of them was not here yet. The other one was too little to go. And so we left them at home, and the 3 of us went down, and we were there for that. And we were so shocked after it was over that we were like, okay, we just need to get out of here before these people lose their mind. So we didn't really celebrate after we left the stadium. We just kind of put our heads down and was kind of watching around. And then once we got in the car, it was just kind of like, just completely lose our minds. But yeah, it's, I've been able to make some memories, the last year, especially. And then hopefully we're going to get up to Fayetteville this year for a couple games. Because my youngest has never been to Fayetteville. My oldest has been, but he wasn't old enough to remember it. So
gotcha.
Looking forward to maybe checking a couple boxes this year off the list.
Man, that sounds fun. Well, let me know when you're also over in town too.
We'll do, man.
Well, man, I'm gonna tell you what, I've had a lot of fun. And
enjoyed it, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, anytime we were just kind of flowed by the whole time. I mean, it was just it was just so easy. And again, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. And it's always open. If there's ever a need, man, I'll always let you know. And I'm sure the Hog fans also will enjoy it too as well. Because I mean, hell, it's been nice. It has been. It's been really a lot of fun.
We are we're inside a month, man. It's here. It's here. It's time to get ready. It's time to, start working the vocal cords and get ready for those hog calls and, get this motion down right for the tailgate and, just get your recipes out, blow the dust off the recipe cards and let's get all the good food out there to tailgate. And let's win some ball games this year, man.
It's time for Arkansas to have some fun. Arkansas fans to have some fun again.
Yeah.
Because stinker with football, stinker with basketball, stinker with with baseball.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it was kind of a stinker with softball too, and the way that it ended as well. That was
rough.
ugly and tough.
That was really so rough.
A couple of years ago, as a Razorback fan, you thought, okay, man, every time you turn around, some good news was dropping somewhere.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen the last 12
We need
months.
less of this and just more of the steady ride. You know, I'm like I said, I've dealt with enough heartbreak. I'm ready to go and throw out some heartbreak to some people.
Yeah, same here. Well, I want to thank Torchy's, also our proud sponsor. Make sure to check out their locations in Fayetteville and in Rogers. Go check out their full service bar. Also, their house-made queso and that taco of the month. Well, for Marcus, myself, Jason, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Y'all take care and go Hogs.